Our history books might be missing their most brilliant chapters. Ancient builders, without a single computer, created structures that modern engineers struggle to explain. This video uncovers 15 ancient engineering feats that required an advanced understanding of mathematics and physics. You will gain a completely new lens for viewing history, one where ruins transform into sophisticated scientific puzzles. How did a civilization align a pyramid to true north with near-perfect accuracy? What kind of mind designed a complex gear system to predict eclipses 2,000 years ago? By the end, you will no longer see these sites as mere relics of the past, but as deliberate, encoded messages from some of humanity's greatest thinkers. What does it say about us that we are still unraveling their secrets today? These feats did not emerge from a void of knowledge. They were born from a world where mathematics was not an abstract subject, but a living, breathing language of survival and meaning. For ancient cultures, the pressing needs of society were the great engines of innovation. When would the Nile flood? How do you divide land fairly after the waters recede? Where do you place a temple so it aligns with the rising sun on a sacred day? These were not academic exercises, they were urgent questions demanding practical solutions. The answers were found in the meticulous observation of the stars, the development of geometry to measure the earth, and a profound understanding of materials. Their textbooks were the night sky and the riverbank. Their professors were generations of artisans and priests who passed down hard-won knowledge through practice and tradition. This was an advanced understanding built not from theory, but from a deep, intimate dialogue with the physical world. It was an intelligence woven into the fabric of daily life, used to predict seasons for planting, to orient monuments to the heavens, and to create structures that would stand for millennia. So when we look at a pyramid that has not shifted for 4,500 years, we are not looking at a lucky guess. We are looking at the logical outcome of a civilization that had mastered the principles of weight, balance, and celestial timing long before those principles were given modern names. This context is our key. It allows us to move from simply wondering how they did it to beginning to understand the brilliant, practical minds that saw the problems and engineered the solutions. It transforms awe into a deeper appreciation, setting the stage for the specific, astonishing puzzles we are about to explore. That practical intelligence manifests with breathtaking clarity in the very first structure on our list, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its most famous feature is its size, but its most profound secret is its orientation. The sides of this monumental tomb are aligned to the four cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with a precision that borders on the impossible. The error is a mere 3/60ths of a single degree. To put that in perspective, that is a finer alignment than many modern buildings achieve with laser levels and satellite data. This is not a lucky accident. It is the signature of a civilization that spoke the language of the cosmos fluently. So how did they do it 4,500 years ago without a magnetic compass which points to magnetic north, not true north? The leading theory is as elegant as it is complex. Builders likely used a method called the simultaneous transit of two stars. Imagine an ancient Egyptian astronomer, perhaps a priest, observing the night sky. They would track the circular path of a star as it rose and set, marking its positions on the horizon. By focusing on two specific stars that circled the celestial pole, like Mizar and Kochab in the bowl of the Little Dipper, they could bisect the angle between their rotation points. The midpoint of that arc would point directly to true north, the axis around which the entire sky turns. This process required not just patient observation over many nights, but a sophisticated grasp of spherical geometry, understanding the sky as a dome, and precise timekeeping to note the stars' positions. It was celestial engineering. This astronomical precision was mirrored on the ground with equal mastery. The pyramid's base is a near-perfect square, with sides that differ in length by less than the width of your hand. They achieved this using standardized measurement units, likely based on the royal cubit, and advanced surveying techniques that may have involved flooding the foundation trench with water to create a perfectly level plane, or using sighting rods and rope to create right angles. But why go to such extraordinary lengths? For the Egyptians, this alignment was far more than a technical showcase. It was a spiritual and cosmic imperative. The pyramid was a machine for resurrection, a ramp to the heavens. Aligning it with the cardinal points integrated the pharaoh's eternal resting place into the fundamental order of the universe, mirroring the sun's journey from east to west and connecting the earthly realm with the eternal cycles of the stars. The structure was an axis mundi, a pivot between worlds, and that is the true marvel. We can explain the methods, we can theorize about the tools, but we still cannot fully replicate the cultural conviction that drove such flawless execution. The Great Pyramid stands not as a tomb of stone, but as a permanent equation written in limestone, a statement of harmony between human ambition and cosmic law. It sets a staggering standard, a challenge whispered across millennia. If this was their opening argument in geometry and astronomy, what other profound calculations were they capable of? Such cosmic alignment speaks to a civilization thinking in grand, eternal cycles. Yet another ancient culture took those celestial observations and miniaturized them into a machine of breathtaking complexity. In the year 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera discovered something that should not have existed. Amid the broken statues and pottery of a Roman-era shipwreck, they recovered a corroded lump of bronze and wood about the size of a large book. For decades, it was a museum curiosity, a mysterious artifact covered in calcified crust. Then, researchers began to look closer. Using advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography, they peered inside the crust and saw something astonishing. Gears, dozens of interlocking bronze gears arranged in a precise, layered mechanism. This was not a statue or a simple navigational tool. It was the Antikythera mechanism, now recognized as the world's first known analog computer. Its purpose was to model the cosmos. By turning a hand crank on the side, an operator could calculate the positions of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 known planets across the zodiac. It predicted lunar phases and, most remarkably, eclipses, displaying them on a dial that accounted for their timing and whether they would be solar or lunar. The device even modeled the moon's subtle irregular orbit, a wobble known as lunar anomaly, by using a brilliant piece of engineering called a differential gear. This assembly of gears, which allows 2 input motions to produce 1 smoothed output, is a technology that does not reappear in the historical record until the 16th century, inside sophisticated European clocks. To conceive of this, the ancient Greek maker needed more than just skilled craftsmanship. They required a deep, mathematical understanding of celestial cycles. They had to translate the observed periods of the sun and moon, their synodic and sidereal months, into precise gear ratios. For example, to model the moon's 19-year metonic cycle, where lunar phases repeat on the same calendar dates, they used a gear train with a ratio of 254 teeth to 19. This is pure applied mathematics, turning astronomical theory into tangible, mechanical prediction. The inscriptions on the device's casing are a user manual of the heavens, detailing cycles and providing eclipse predictions. This artifact single-handedly shatters the persistent myth of ancient technological primitiveness. It reveals a pocket of advanced mechanical computation, a fusion of astronomy, mathematics, and precision engineering that was so advanced, its principles were lost for over 1,000 years. We are left to wonder, was this a unique masterpiece or merely a single surviving example of a forgotten tradition of sophisticated machinery? What other intellectual wonders sank to the bottom of the Mediterranean, leaving no trace in our history books? The mechanical cosmos of the Antikythera device was a marvel of miniature precision, but another civilization engineered its mastery on a truly monumental, life-giving scale. While the Greeks were modeling the heavens in bronze, the Romans were reshaping the earth itself to command one of its most vital forces, water. Their aqueducts were not mere channels, they were the arteries of an empire, a triumph of civil engineering that solved a problem of breathtaking complexity. How do you move millions of gallons of fresh water across dozens of miles of rugged countryside, using only the force of gravity, and deliver it reliably into the heart of a thirsty city? The answer lies in a deceptively simple principle executed with impossible precision: a constant, gentle downhill slope. This was the core genius of Roman hydraulic engineering. To maintain a flow strong enough to move water but slow enough to prevent destructive erosion, engineers calculated gradients so shallow they defy belief, sometimes as slight as a 1 in 10,000 decline. That means for every 10,000 feet the aqueduct traveled forward, it would drop only a single foot in height. Achieving this over mountain valleys and uneven plains required more than just a good eye. It demanded an advanced, practical understanding of fluid dynamics, accounting for friction within the channel and the pressure of the atmosphere, all without a single mechanical pump. Their most crucial tool for this task was the corbelled, a sophisticated leveling instrument. Imagine a long, rigid wooden frame, perhaps 20 feet in length, supported on legs. A water-filled groove ran along its top, and sighting lines were etched at either end. By ensuring the water's surface was perfectly level from both sighting points, engineers could establish a true horizontal plane across great distances, calculating the minute drop needed for the next section of channel. It was an exercise in large-scale geometry made tangible, but the Roman genius did not stop at moving water, it extended to containing it. They built these enduring structures with a material that seems almost magical: pozzolanic concrete. By mixing lime with volcanic ash from the region of Pozzuoli, they created a cement that could cure and harden even underwater, forming a monolithic, incredibly durable mass. This was an empirical grasp of material science, a recipe discovered through observation and perfected through practice. The result was infrastructure that supported cities for centuries, supplying public baths, fountains, and private homes, fundamentally enabling urban life on an unprecedented scale. The aqueducts stand as a testament to an engineering philosophy that viewed obstacles not as barriers, but as puzzles to be solved with measurement, material, and relentless practical logic. They channeled not just water, but the very lifeblood of civilization, laying a hydraulic groundwork that modern civil engineering still walks upon today. It prompts a fascinating question: if they could conquer distance and gravity with such elegance, what other fundamental forces did ancient builders learn to harness in silence? The Roman mastery of water was a triumph of pure, functional engineering, a dialogue with gravity and distance. But what happens when the goal shifts from practical necessity to the pursuit of divine perfection? The ancient Greeks answered this question on the sun-baked Acropolis of Athens, with a structure that engages in a silent, sophisticated conversation with the human eye itself. The Parthenon is celebrated for its majestic columns and sculptural beauty, but its true genius is invisible to the casual observer. To make the temple appear perfectly straight, harmonious, and alive, its builders deliberately built it crooked. They employed a series of subtle optical refinements, a practice known as intosses. This was architecture not just as construction, but as applied psychology and advanced geometry. Take the iconic columns. If you were to run a taut string from the top to the bottom of one, you would find the marble does not form a straight line. Instead, each column swells gently outward about a third of the way up before tapering again toward the top. To the modern eye, this bulge is almost imperceptible, but its effect on the ancient viewer was profound. From a distance, a perfectly straight column set against a bright sky would actually appear to curve inward, an optical illusion caused by the contrast. The calculated bulge of Intosses preemptively corrected this illusion, making the column look perfectly straight and robust from the intended viewing points below. The architects manipulated reality to create a more truthful perception. This principle of intentional distortion extended to the entire temple platform. The stylobate, the floor on which the columns stand, is not flat. It curves upward slightly in the center, rising about 4 inches over its 200-foot length. Without this curve, the human eye would perceive the long, horizontal line as sagging in the middle, like a weighted rope. The upward arc counteracts this, presenting a platform that looks steadfast and level. Even the columns themselves are not set perfectly vertical. They lean inward slightly, and the corner columns are subtly thicker to withstand the visual weight of the open sky behind them. Every single measurement was a considered variable in a complex visual equation. Executing this required far more than an artist's intuition. It demanded a sophisticated, mathematical understanding of human sightlines, perspective, and static loads. The builders had to calculate how much curve was necessary to correct the illusion without compromising the structural integrity of the marble. They were balancing aesthetics with physics, using geometry not to describe ideal forms on parchment, but to create the experience of an ideal form in three-dimensional space. This tells us that Greek architects were, in essence, applied mathematicians and cognitive scientists. They understood that mathematical purity alone could not achieve the desired emotional and spiritual impact. True perfection for the human observer required a compassionate deception, a harmonious lie built from stone. The Parthenon does not just stand as a monument to the goddess Athena, but as a monument to a profound idea that beauty is not a fixed property, but a dynamic relationship between the object, the eye, and the mind. It makes you wonder how many other ancient wonders are quietly correcting our vision, guiding us to see not what is, but what was meant to be felt. From the visual deceptions of the Parthenon, we travel to one of the most isolated landscapes on Earth, where a different kind of marvel stands in silent, imposing rows. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is a speck of volcanic rock in the vast Pacific Ocean, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent. Yet here, a resilient people accomplished something that seems to defy all logic. They carved nearly 1,000 massive stone figures called Moai from the volcanic tuff of the Rono Raraku quarry, and then they moved them. The scale of this task is almost incomprehensible. The average Moai stands about 13 feet tall and weighs around 14 tons, but the largest completed statue, named Paro, towers at 33 feet and is estimated to weigh a staggering 82 tons. That is heavier than a fully loaded semi-truck, and the journey was not a short one. Many of these giants were transported up to 11 miles across the island's rugged, rolling terrain, from the quarry to permanent ceremonial platforms called ahu along the coast. For centuries, the how of this feat was the island's greatest mystery, often wrapped in legends that the statues walked themselves to the sea. Modern science, however, suggests the truth may not be far from that poetic idea. One compelling theory, supported by recent experimental archaeology, proposes a walking method. Imagine teams of rope pullers not dragging the statue, but working in a coordinated, rhythmic rocking motion. By attaching ropes to the top of the upright statue, teams on either side could carefully tilt it forward, pivoting it on one edge of its base, then pull it to rock onto the opposite edge. With precise, timed pulls, the statue would appear to walk forward in a swaying, stilted gait. This is not brute force, it is applied physics of the highest order. It requires an intuitive yet advanced understanding of the statue's center of mass. The pullers had to know exactly how far to rock the figure to gain forward momentum without allowing it to pass the point of no return and crash face first into the earth. They managed pivot points, friction, and balance in real time, turning a multi-ton block of stone into a controlled, rhythmic pendulum. It was a communal dance with gravity. Alternative theories suggest the use of wooden sledges or rollers on paths lubricated with sweet potato paste to reduce friction, which implies a different but equally sophisticated grasp of distributive weight and traction management. Regardless of the exact method, the achievement speaks to a profound shared knowledge. Without wheels, without large draft animals, and on an island with limited timber resources, the people of Rapa Nui solved a monumental engineering puzzle through collective intelligence and a deep, practical feel for the forces at play. They transformed a logistical nightmare into a profound cultural expression, connecting the living community with the protective spirits of their ancestors. The silent Moai, therefore, are not just statues. They are frozen testimony to a society that could mobilize physics, coordination, and unwavering purpose, moving mountains or at least their likeness to watch over their world. It makes you pause on such a remote island. What other profound understandings of balance and motion were discovered, applied, and then lost to time? The Moai of Easter Island stand as a testament to moving massive weight. But another ancient culture mastered the art of making weight itself disappear. High in the Andes Mountains, the Inca Empire built with stone in a way that seems to defy the very nature of solid matter. At sites like Machu Picchu and the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, you will find walls assembled from colossal, irregularly shaped blocks. Yet these stones are fitted together so meticulously that, even after 500 years, you cannot slide a single piece of paper between them. This is not simple stacking. It is a technique known as Ashlar masonry, and it represents a three-dimensional puzzle of staggering complexity, solved without iron tools, mortar, or a written blueprint. How did they achieve such impossible precision? The answer lies in a profound, intuitive grasp of geometry that feels almost like stone whispering. Imagine a master mason facing a rough granite boulder. His task is not to cut it into a standard cube, but to shape it so its every face perfectly mirrors the unique, irregular contours of the stones already set around it. This required an advanced spatial intelligence we might call practical topology, understanding how forms can interlock in 3 dimensions. They likely used a process of trial fitting, carefully chiseling the stone with harder stone or bronze tools, then lowering it into place to see where it made contact. They would then lift it, grind down the high spots revealed by dust or pigment transferred from the neighbor, and repeat, over and over. It was a slow, deliberate conversation between masons and material, where each block was custom-tailored to its specific location in the wall. The result was a monolithic structure where each stone is locked in place by the intricate shapes of those surrounding it, distributing weight and stress evenly across the entire surface. But the Inca genius went beyond creating static perfection. They engineered for chaos. This region is one of the most seismically active on the planet. The Inca builders understood that a rigid, mortared wall would shatter in a powerful tremor, so they designed their walls to dance. The stones are often slightly rounded or beveled at the joints, and the walls themselves taper inward as they rise. During an earthquake, this allows the individual blocks to sway and shift minutely against one another, absorbing and dissipating the energy of the quake. When the shaking stops, gravity and those perfectly fitted faces guide each stone to settle back into its original position. It is empirical seismic engineering, developed through centuries of observation and iterative improvement. They did not just build walls, they built resilient systems that understood dynamic forces. At Sacsayhuaman, some of these interlocking stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they were lifted and fitted with the same exacting care. This was not merely construction, it was a philosophy of harmony, both with the mountain landscape and the unpredictable earth beneath it. The walls seemed to grow directly from the bedrock, an eternal embrace between human intention and geological reality. In a world of constant tectonic movement, they built not for rigidity but for intelligent flexibility, creating spaces of enduring peace within the stone. It forces a humbling question: what can we learn from builders who listened so closely to the earth that they taught stones how to survive its tremors? The Inca taught stones to dance with the trembling earth, a profound mastery of static force and dynamic response. Yet another ancient civilization turned its genius toward measuring the very passage of time and the unseen movements of the planet itself. In Han Dynasty China, around the 2nd century, an extraordinary polymath named Zhang Heng engineered devices that blurred the line between science and art, creating machines that quantified the cosmos. His most famous invention was the world's first seismoscope, a bronze vessel adorned with 8 dragon heads, each holding a metal ball above the open mouth of a corresponding bronze toad below. The principle was as elegant as it was ingenious. Inside the vessel hung a delicate, inverted pendulum. When a distant earthquake sent tremors through the ground, the pendulum would swing, striking a lever mechanism inside one of the 8 directional channels. This would release a ball from the dragon's mouth on that side, clattering into the toad's mouth below. Not only did this indicate an earthquake had occurred, it pointed to the direction of the epicenter, hundreds of miles away. This was not magic, it was applied physics. Zhang Heng had to understand the propagation of seismic waves, the transfer of kinetic energy, and the principles of inertial motion to design a trigger sensitive enough to react to distant tremors yet stable enough to ignore local disturbances. It was a predictive instrument, a mechanical ear pressed to the ground, listening for the planet's deep whispers, but his ambition did not stop with the Earth. Zhang Heng also perfected the water-powered armillary sphere, a complex model of the heavens that tracked the movements of stars and planets with automated precision. This was an astronomical clock driven not by gears alone, but by the constant, regulated flow of water. The engineering challenge here was monumental. To keep time accurately, the flow rate of the water driving the mechanism had to be perfectly steady. Any variation would throw off the celestial model. Chinese engineers achieved this through sophisticated reservoir and overflow systems, mastering hydrodynamics to create a consistent hydraulic force. This water turned gear trains that rotated rings representing celestial circles, modeling the apparent motion of the sun, moon, and stars across the sky. It could mark the hours of the day and the passing of the seasons, its movement synchronized with the observed heavens. This device required a synthesis of knowledge that feels staggeringly modern: astronomy for the model, mathematics for the gear ratios, and fluid dynamics for the power source. These were not palace curiosities, they were vital instruments of state and culture. The seismoscope provided early warning of disasters, allowing the empire to send aid. The armillary sphere regulated the imperial calendar, dictating the precise timing for planting, harvests, and sacred rituals that harmonized human activity with the cosmic order. Zhang Heng's work represents a quantitative leap in thought, a shift from observing nature to building instruments that measured and modeled it automatically. Long before the mechanical clock ticked in European cathedrals, Chinese inventors had already built a water-driven cosmos in bronze, capturing time and tectonic shifts in a delicate balance of flow and force. It makes you wonder, what other rhythms of the universe did they learn to translate into the gentle, predictable drip of water and the turn of a gear? The gentle, predictable drip of water in a Chinese armillary sphere measured the orderly heavens, but another civilization confronted a far more urgent and earthly challenge: the relentless thirst of the desert. In the arid heartlands of ancient Persia, survival depended not on rivers from the sky, but on hidden rivers beneath the sand. Their solution was not to fight the environment, but to listen to it, resulting in one of the most sustainable and ingenious feats of engineering in history, the Qanat system. Imagine a subterranean river hand-dug by human ingenuity. This was the essence of a Qanat. It began with locating a water table at the foothills of a mountain where alluvial fans trapped precious groundwater. From this mother well, Persian engineers would tunnel a gently sloping underground channel, sometimes for dozens of miles, all the way to the surface at a village or agricultural plain. But the true marvel was not the tunnel itself. It was the series of vertical access shafts dug along its entire length, appearing from above like a line of mysterious craters marching across the desert. These shafts served a triple purpose. They provided ventilation for the diggers working deep below, they allowed for the removal of excavated earth, and they enabled maintenance for generations to come. Constructing a Qanat was an exercise in applied mathematics and geology that demanded generational patience. The most critical calculation was the gradient. The tunnel's slope had to be precise, just steep enough to allow water to flow by gravity over vast distances, but shallow enough to prevent erosion that would collapse the channel or cause the water to burst forth too violently. A gradient of 1 in 1,000 was common, meaning the tunnel dropped only 1 meter for every kilometer it traveled. Achieving this over uneven terrain without modern surveying tools required an advanced understanding of leveling. Builders likely used simple but effective methods, perhaps sighting along aligned plumb bobs in successive shafts or using water-filled channels as long levels to ensure their invisible river would flow silently and reliably for centuries. This was civil engineering turned inward, a hidden latticework of water veins that transformed the landscape. The Qanat's brilliance was in its conservation. By flowing underground, water was protected from the evaporating sun and dusty winds of the desert with minimal loss. It delivered a cool, clean supply directly to where it was needed, creating sudden oases of lush gardens and fertile fields in the midst of barren plains. This was not just irrigation, it was the creation of life from hidden geometry. The social impact was profound. A Qanat was a communal project, often taking years or decades to complete, binding communities together. Its maintenance became a sacred civic duty, with clear laws governing water rights and upkeep, fostering a culture of shared resource management. The Persian Empire and later civilizations across the Middle East and North Africa flourished on the back of these silent, underground rivers. They enabled cities like Persepolis to rise in the desert and sustain trade routes along the Silk Road. In a very real sense, the Qanat was a civilization-making machine. Its principles of gravity-fed flow, minimal evaporation, and sustainable extraction speak directly to our modern challenges in water-scarce regions. Today, as we grapple with depleting aquifers and inefficient irrigation, we are relearning the wisdom of this ancient, invisible network. The Qanat teaches a powerful lesson that the most advanced engineering is sometimes the one that works in quiet harmony with the Earth's own systems, a lesson written not in stone, but in the cool, dark flow of water beneath it. It compels us to ask what other forgotten, sustainable technologies lie buried, waiting to quench a thirsty future. Deep beneath the desert, the Qanat was a triumph of hidden, utilitarian geometry. But in the lush jungles of Costa Rica, an ancient culture pursued a different kind of perfection, one that served no obvious practical purpose at all. Scattered across the Diquis Delta and often partially reclaimed by the forest, lie hundreds of enigmatic stone spheres, ranging from the size of a bowling ball to colossal orbs over 2 meters across and weighing more than 16 tons. These objects are carved with a precision that feels alien. They are not roughly rounded rocks, but near-perfect spheres, fashioned from hard gabbro rock by a pre-Columbian society that had no metal tools, no written language, and no wheel. Their existence poses a beautiful, silent question. Why would a culture invest generations of labor to create objects of such pure, geometric form? The answer lies in a process that was itself a slow meditation on symmetry. Archaeologists believe the spheres were shaped through a methodical, multi-stage technique. First, large boulders were selected from riverbeds or quarried from outcrops. Using harder stones as hammers, artisans would peck away at the surface, gradually knocking off large fragments to find the sphere hidden within the rock. Then began the grinding phase, likely using sand and water as abrasives on the stone's surface, patiently wearing it down. Finally, the spheres were polished to a smooth, almost reflective finish. This was not a quick act of carving, it was a prolonged conversation with material, a gradual revelation of form guided by a constant, internalized check for symmetry. But how did they check without calipers or templates? Maintaining spherical perfection across a surface you cannot see all at once is a profound challenge. They likely used a combination of simple, brilliant methods. A chord of fixed length could be used as a radius gauge, checking for consistent distance from an estimated center point at many locations. They might have rolled the sphere on a flat, muddy surface to reveal high spots that rocked or wobbled, which would then be ground down. This process implies an advanced, tactile understanding of three-dimensional geometry. The maker had to hold the ideal sphere in their mind and constantly compare the emerging stone to that mental template, correcting deviations through patient, iterative refinement. It was applied mathematics made solid. The mystery deepens when we ask not just how, but why and where. Many spheres were found arranged in deliberate groupings, lines, triangles, or alignments leading to the entrances of important structures. Some researchers suggest these alignments pointed to celestial events, like the rising of certain stars or the solstice sun, turning the landscape into an astronomical observatory. Others propose they marked social hierarchies, with larger spheres denoting the power of specific lineages or chiefs. Their placement was not random, it was planned, requiring careful surveying and measurement of the land. This tells us the spheres were more than art, they were active components in a cultural and possibly cosmic diagram. The sheer investment is staggering. A single large sphere could represent years of dedicated labor by skilled artisans. For a society without a centralized, imperial state like the Romans or Incas, this represents a massive communal effort focused not on defense or irrigation, but on an abstract ideal. The sphere has no sharp edges, no preferred orientation. It is the most egalitarian of shapes, the same from every angle, a symbol of unity, wholeness, and perhaps the cosmos itself. In creating these objects, the Dikwis culture was expressing a value system that prized mathematical harmony and symbolic purity above immediate utility. They were crafting permanent ideas, not tools. The spheres stand as a testament to a universal human impulse to give perfect, tangible form to the abstract principles that order our world. They are quiet monuments to the mind's ability to conceive of perfection, and the hand's stubborn will to wrest it from stone. From the silent, perfect spheres of the jungle, we move to a structure that was designed to be seen for miles, a defiant beacon in the face of a chaotic and treacherous sea. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was not just a tower, it was a statement of human ambition against the unpredictable Mediterranean. As one of the tallest man-made structures of the ancient world, soaring to a height estimated at over 100 meters, its existence was a continuous battle with physics. Every aspect of its design was an answer to a brutal, elemental question. How do you keep a massive stone tower standing with a giant fire burning at its peak on a tiny island constantly battered by waves and wind? The foundation itself was an act of profound engineering. The lighthouse was built on the small island of Pharos, which was connected to the mainland by a man-made causeway. But the base was not simply placed on the sand. Historical accounts suggest builders began by clearing the seabed around the island and then constructing a foundation of massive blocks, possibly set within a cofferdam, a watertight enclosure pumped dry to allow work below the surface. This underwater base had to distribute the incredible weight of the stone tower above and resist the relentless scouring force of the waves. To bind the stones against this marine erosion, engineers reportedly used molten lead as a mortar. Lead, being flexible and resistant to water, would act as a shock absorber, allowing the foundation blocks to shift minutely without cracking, a brilliant solution for a dynamic, hostile environment. This was materials science applied on a monumental scale. The tower's form was a masterpiece of load-bearing architecture. It was built in 3 tapering stages: a massive square base, a slender octagonal middle, and a cylindrical top crowned by the beacon chamber. This graduated shape efficiently channeled the weight of the entire structure down to its wide base, providing stability, but the true innovation may have been inside. To fuel the great fire at the summit, workers needed a way to transport wood or other combustibles up the tower continuously. The likely solution was a hollow core featuring a broad, spiraling ramp. This design allowed ox-drawn carts to ascend the interior, delivering fuel directly to the hearth. This internal ramp also served a crucial structural purpose, acting like a central spine that helped brace the entire tower against the powerful winds coming off the sea. It was a multifunctional design where circulation and support were woven into a single, brilliant concept. At the pinnacle, the beacon's light had to be more than a flame. It had to be a focused signal. Ancient sources describe a sophisticated mirror system, likely made of polished bronze. This was not a simple reflector. It was an early optical instrument designed to project and intensify the fire's light over vast distances. By curving and positioning these mirrors, the lighthouse keepers could create a concentrated beam, cutting through the night fog and storm. Some accounts even suggest the mirror could be used during the day to reflect sunlight, creating a dazzling, far-visible point of reference. This fusion of structural integrity and optical science made the lighthouse a true marvel of applied physics. For over 1,600 years, it stood as a guardian and a symbol, a proof that through geometry, material knowledge, and sheer will, humanity could build a fixed point of order in the heart of nature's chaos. Its light did more than guide ships. It illuminated a path for future engineering, demonstrating that the tallest ambitions must be rooted in the deepest understanding of the earth, the sea, and the sky. The guiding light of Alexandria marked a fixed point in a known sea, but for the Maya, the entire cosmos was a vast, moving clockwork that demanded constant observation. Their civilization, deep in the jungles of Mesoamerica, turned architecture itself into a sophisticated scientific instrument for timekeeping. At sites like Chichen Itza, the structure known as El Caracol, or the Observatory, stands as a testament to this celestial obsession. Its design is a radical departure from the typical stepped pyramid. A circular tower rises atop a broad rectangular platform with narrow, strategically placed windows and a winding interior staircase. This was not a temple for ritual alone. It was a functional observatory, a stone machine built to track the precise movements of planets and stars across the night sky. The alignments are breathtakingly specific. Key windows in El Caracol frame the extreme northern and southern setting points of Venus, a planet of paramount importance to Maya cosmology. Other sightlines target the equinox sunsets and the path of the moon. The building itself is a permanent, immovable set of crosshairs aimed at the heavens. This architectural precision was the physical counterpart to an intellectual achievement of staggering depth, the Maya calendar system. While medieval Europe still struggled with the inaccuracies of the Julian calendar, Maya astronomer priests had calculated the solar year to be approximately 365.2420 days. That is accurate to within minutes of our modern measurement. They achieved this through generations of relentless observation, recorded in intricate bark paper books using a complex writing system and a sophisticated mathematical notation that included a symbol for zero, a conceptual leap many old world cultures had not yet made. Their timekeeping was a layered masterpiece. They used the 260-day Tzolk'in, or sacred round, interlocking with the 365-day Hob, or solar year, to create a 52-year calendar round. But their true mathematical prowess is revealed in the long count, a linear count of days from a mythological starting point, allowing them to calculate dates thousands of years in the past or future. This was not abstract math, it was a tool for prophecy, history, and social order. The architecture served this system. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza is perhaps the most famous example. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow along the northern staircase, creating the undulating illusion of a serpent descending from the temple to the earth. This was a public, unmissable celestial event, a fusion of astronomy, geometry, and art that reinforced the connection between the rulers, the gods, and the cosmic cycle. The Maya saw time not as a line, but as a sacred, cyclical force, and they built their world to mark its passage with stone and shadow. Their cities were not just places to live, they were three-dimensional almanacs, ensuring that every planting season, every royal ceremony, and every moment of community life resonated in harmony with the great celestial clock. In doing so, they achieved a seamless integration of cosmology, mathematics, and engineering that was, quite literally, written in the stars and carved into the very bones of their world. For the Maya, the cosmos was a clockwork of celestial cycles, measured with stone and shadow. But another ancient culture sought not just to measure space, but to master it, creating an interior that felt like the heavens themselves brought down to earth. In the heart of Rome stands the Pantheon, a temple whose roof is a single, breathtaking declaration of engineering defiance. Its dome, a perfect hemisphere of unreinforced concrete, has been the largest of its kind in the world for nearly 2,000 years. To stand beneath it is to experience a profound architectural magic, a space so vast and open it seems to float, anchored only by a circular window to the sky, the oculus. The Romans did not just build a roof, they seemingly suspended the sky in stone. The sheer scale of the problem was unprecedented. Traditional post and lintel architecture, using columns and horizontal beams, could never span such a distance. The weight would be catastrophic. Roman engineers solved this with a revolutionary understanding of material behavior and structural mechanics. They knew concrete was superb under compression, brilliant at handling weight pushing down on it, but weak under tension when forces try to pull it apart. A dome is the perfect shape to exploit this strength because its curved form naturally channels all the weight downward along its meridians into the massive 20-foot-thick supporting drum wall. It is a continuous arch rotated in 3 dimensions, turning weakness into monumental strength. But the true genius is in the details of the dome's construction. If they had made it a solid mass of the same heavy concrete used at the base, its own immense weight would have caused it to collapse inward, so the builders applied a sophisticated gradient of materials. As the dome rose, they changed the recipe of the concrete aggregate, the mixed in stones. The lower sections used heavy travertine, but as they climbed, they switched to lighter tufa, then even lighter brick, and finally, for the very top surrounding the oculus, a porous, feather-light volcanic stone called pumice. They essentially made the dome lighter as it got higher, carefully managing the load on the structure below. Then they carved away any non-essential material. The stunning coffered squares you see on the interior are not merely decorative, they are structural subtraction. Each indentation removes weight without significantly compromising the dome's compressive strength, like the careful holes in the bone of a bird's wing. This combination, a lighter mix at the top and a carved-out interior, created a dome that was both monumentally strong and astonishingly graceful. The open oculus is the masterstroke. It is not a construction shortcut, it is the logical culmination of the design. The hole at the apex is actually the dome's strongest point, as it eliminates the most unstable section where compressive forces would converge and potentially cause a blowout. It also serves as the building's sole source of direct light, a moving sunbeam that paints the interior through the day and allows rain to fall into the discrete drainage system in the floor, integrating the temple with the very elements. This was not guesswork. It was the result of generations of empirical experimentation with concrete mixes, forms, and arches. The Pantheon's enduring integrity, standing through earthquakes and the fall of an empire, is a direct testament to a deep, practical science of materials that was largely lost for centuries after Rome's decline. We can analyze the ratios and the aggregates, but we can only marvel at the confidence required to build such a space, to create a void of such perfect geometry, and trust completely in the silent, compressive strength of stone and mortar. It represents a pinnacle of architectural faith, a belief so strong in the laws of physics that they dared to roof the world with a single, flawless thought. The Pantheon's dome is a triumph of interior space, a universe contained within a perfect hemisphere. But what if an entire civilization decided to turn the outside of the Earth itself into a canvas, creating art so vast it can only be comprehended from the heavens? On the arid, wind-scoured plains of southern Peru, the Nazca people performed this very act, etching a gallery of monumental scale directly into the desert floor. These are the Nazca lines, hundreds of geoglyphs ranging from simple, arrow straight lines running for miles to intricate depictions of a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and even a strange humanoid figure often called the astronaut. Their method was deceptively simple, yet the result is an engineering puzzle of staggering ambition. The builders did not add material to create these shapes, they subtracted it. By carefully removing the top layer of dark, iron oxide-coated pebbles that blanket the desert, they exposed the lighter, creamy-colored soil beneath. The contrast created crisp, enduring lines that have survived for over 2,000 years, but the simplicity of the technique belies the profound geometric challenge. How do you create a perfect 200-meter-long hummingbird or a kilometer-long straight line across rolling, uneven terrain when you yourself are standing on the ground, unable to see the whole design? The answer lies in a masterful application of scaling and surveying. Scholars believe the Nazca engineers likely created small-scale models of their designs first. Using a consistent unit of measurement, perhaps based on a human stride or a length of cord, they could then transpose the design onto the gigantic landscape. They would have established a central axis line and then used a network of stakes and ropes to plot key points, scaling up the model's proportions with meticulous care. To maintain a straight line over a hill, they would have used a series of aligned sighting poles, ensuring that from one marker to the next, the line never wavered, even as the earth rose and fell beneath their feet. This was large-scale coordinate geometry performed with nothing more than wood, fiber, and an unwavering collective vision. The social organization required is almost as impressive as the lines themselves. This was not the work of a lone artist. Creating and maintaining these figures over several generations demanded a highly coordinated community effort, with teams assigned to clear specific sectors, following the precise instructions of the master surveyors. It speaks to a shared cultural purpose so strong that it could mobilize people to create art not for their own immediate view, but for a perspective they could never physically achieve. This leads to the enduring mystery of their purpose. Were they ritual pathways for ceremonial walks, a giant astronomical calendar aligned to solstice sunrises? offerings to deities believed to dwell in the sky, who alone could see the complete forms. While we may never know the exact meaning, the execution itself is a clear message. The Nazca lines demonstrate that this culture possessed a sophisticated, almost modular understanding of space. They could think in two scales simultaneously, the handheld model and the landscape-sized reality. They understood that a curve or an angle must be proportionally consistent whether it is 10 centimeters on a sketch or 100 meters on a hillside. This is a fundamental principle of design and engineering, applied here on a literally epic scale. The lines force us to reconsider what technology means. Without wheels, without metal, and without the ability to fly, they engineered a dialogue with the sky. They turned their entire world into a precise geometric statement, visible only to the clouds, the condors, and the gods they sought to reach. In doing so, they left behind a permanent question, not just about why they built, but about how they learned to see the Earth from a perspective that would remain impossible for humanity for another 2,000 years. The Nazca lines transformed the Earth into a geometric canvas for the heavens, a feat of vision executed from the ground. Yet another legendary wonder sought to bring heaven down to the earthly realm, creating a living paradise that seemed to defy gravity itself. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the ancient world's 7 wonders, present a fascinating enigma, a masterpiece that may have lived more vividly in description than in stone. Ancient historians like Strabo and Philo of Byzantium wrote of a terraced mountain of greenery, built by a king for a homesick queen, rising in lush tiers above the flat Mesopotamian plain. Whether this garden was a physical reality or a poetic ideal, the engineering concept it inspired pushed the known boundaries of its time into the realm of the spectacular. The core challenge was not just building upward but making life flourish at the top. In the arid climate of Babylon, sustaining a verdant, elevated forest would have required a river in the sky, a constant, reliable flow of water from the Euphrates far below to the highest terraces. This demanded an irrigation system of staggering ingenuity. Ancient sources hint at the use of a chain pump, a loop of buckets mounted on a rotating wheel, powered by human or animal labor walking on a treadmill. Water would be scooped from the river, lifted to a reservoir on the first terrace, and then perhaps lifted again by another pump to the next level, in a cascading series of hydraulic steps. Another proposed mechanism is an early form of the Archimedes screw, a helical device within a cylinder that, when turned, lifts water efficiently along its threads. While the screw is named for the Greek inventor Archimedes, who lived centuries later, the basic principle of a rotating inclined plane could have been discovered independently by Babylonian engineers. Designing and coordinating such a system was an exercise in applied physics. It required a deep, practical grasp of hydraulics, understanding how water behaves under pressure and motion. It demanded knowledge of mechanical advantage, using gears or pulley systems to multiply human or animal effort to lift tremendous volumes of water against the relentless pull of gravity. And it all rested on a structural foundation that could bear a colossal hidden weight, the saturated soil of an entire elevated ecosystem without collapsing. The gardens would have been a heavy, dripping mountain, a calculated risk of engineering. The speculation itself is where the true value lies. The very idea, whether built or dreamed, represents a quantum leap in ambition. It fused civil engineering with mechanical innovation and advanced horticulture, imagining a closed-loop system where architecture, machinery, and biology worked in concert to create a microclimate. It was the ancient equivalent of designing a self-sustaining biosphere. This vision of a gravity-defying oasis tells us less about what was necessarily built and more about what the ancient mind believed was possible. It reveals an era where engineers were beginning to think in systems, where solving one problem, like watering a high garden, required the invention of new machines and the mastery of multiple scientific principles at once. The Hanging Gardens, real or mythical, stand as a testament to the power of an idea to stretch the limits of contemporary knowledge, to look at a river and a barren plain and see, in the mind's eye, a floating forest. It is a blueprint for paradise drawn not just with plants, but with levers, screws, and the bold calculus of lifting an entire river into the sky. A floating forest of myth speaks to ambition, but on the sun-bleached islands of Malta, ambition took a form both more ancient and more tangible. Here, over 5,000 years ago, a Neolithic people performed a quiet revolution in stone. The megalithic temples like Haga Kim and Mnajdra are not just old, they are foundational, featuring the world's oldest known attempts at creating arch and dome, built 1,000 years before the pyramids of Giza and millennia before the classical Roman arch was conceived. Their method was a patient, powerful logic called corbelling. Imagine the process not as carving a doorway, but as building a ceiling from the ground up. Builders would lay 2 parallel walls of massive limestone blocks. Then, on top of these walls, they would place a new layer of slabs, but each one was positioned to overhang slightly inward toward the center. Another layer would be added atop that, overhanging a little more. Layer by careful layer, the walls would lean in, the space between them narrowing until a single capstone could bridge the final gap, sealing a triangular or domed chamber overhead. This created enclosed, womb-like spaces entirely from stacked stone, without a single curved arch or a drop of mortar. The genius of this technique is entirely in the balance. Each overhanging block is held in place by the immense weight of the stones above it. The inward tilt creates a continuous counter-thrust, a force pushing back against the gravitational pull trying to splay the walls outward. It is a static equilibrium, a perfect locking of compressive forces. The builders had no formal mathematics of vectors or stress analysis. Their understanding was intuitive, born from generations of handling stone, of feeling how weight wants to move, and learning how to coax it into stability. They were mastering physics through touch and observation, developing a rule set through trial and error that said, this much overhang can support that much weight. This empirical knowledge allowed them to sculpt space itself from solid rock, creating monumental ritual chambers that felt both protective and profound. The interiors were often designed with astrological alignments, allowing the sun's rays to pierce the darkness on solstice days, illuminating altars deep within the corbelled gloom. These temples were not mere shelters, they were engineered experiences, machines for ceremony that manipulated both light and the very feeling of enclosure. In their quiet, staggering ambition, the Maltese temples represent a pivotal moment in the human story. They are the Neolithic blueprint, the first bold drafts of an idea that would later be refined into the true arch, the vault, and the dome. They prove that the urge to defy gravity, to create interior worlds of meaning, is not a product of advanced civilization, but one of its primary causes. These stacked stones are a testament to a deep, pre-literate dialogue with force and form, a conversation that began with a simple, daring question: what if we could make the sky out of stone? From those first stacked stones in Malta to the final, floating gardens of legend, a single thread connects every marvel we have explored. Each one, from the Great Pyramid's celestial alignment to the Nazca's earth-spanning geometry, is a testament to a universal human impulse, not merely to build but to understand. These 15 feats collectively reveal a hidden history of scientific inquiry, a long and patient conversation between our ancestors and the fundamental laws of the universe. They remind us that advanced understanding is not the exclusive property of any single era or culture. It is a human trait manifested again and again through meticulous observation, bold experimentation, and an unwavering desire to shape the world with meaning and order. What we have called ancient engineering was, in truth, applied philosophy. It was the physical expression of questions about time, space, balance, and our place within the cosmos. The Maya tracked Venus with stone windows, the Inca taught walls to dance with earthquakes, and the Romans suspended a concrete sky, all driven by the same relentless curiosity that fuels our own laboratories and launch pads today. This journey prompts a profound reconsideration of the linear narrative of technological progress. Our history is not a simple, upward march from primitive to advanced. It is a rich tapestry of diverse intelligences, of peaks and valleys of knowledge, where brilliant solutions were discovered, applied, and sometimes lost, only to be rediscovered centuries later. The Antikythera mechanism alone shatters the timeline, proving that concepts we associate with the Renaissance were alive in the Hellenistic world. These wonders ask us to appreciate the many ways knowledge has been cultivated, not just through written equations, but through the feel of a rope guiding an 80-ton Moai, the sight of a star's transit marking true north, or the sound of water flowing through a hidden desert tunnel. They challenge the hubris of the present, showing that innovation is not defined by the tools available, but by the depth of the questions asked. So as you look at the modern world around you, let this exploration linger. Let it inspire your own curiosity about the past that quietly underpins our present. Which of these feats reshaped your view of history the most? Was it the silent computational power of a 2,000-year-old gear system, or the patient communal effort that walked giants across an island? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are eager to continue delving into the mysteries that connect our modern world to ancient ingenuity, consider subscribing for more journeys into the hidden layers of our shared story. The past is not a closed book, it is an ongoing conversation, and we have only just begun to listen.